Lisa and Mark Williams lived in a quiet suburb of Chicago in their cozy two-story house on the edge of a small, sleepy neighborhood. The house, with its white picket fence and lush green garden, was the embodiment of the family dream they had nurtured for 15 years. Lisa loved the early summer mornings when sunlight streamed through the blinds in their bedroom, filling the room with a soft golden glow, while outside the birds sang and the trees rustled gently. This was exactly how she had always imagined her life when she first started dating Mark. Back then, he was a young and ambitious engineer, focused on his career and full of plans for the future. Mark worked at a large tech company, and his income allowed Lisa to work part-time as an elementary school teacher, giving her more time to spend with their children. Their two kids, 13-year-old Sarah and 9-year-old Nate, had become the center of her world. Evenings at the Williams house were filled with quiet family dinners, playing games with the children, and the occasional trips to the movies or restaurants on the weekends. Lisa meticulously planned each day, making sure that their home was always filled with harmony and comfort. They often went on family outings, rode bikes around the neighborhood, and had picnics by the local lake. But behind the facade of their peaceful family life, there was a growing sense of emptiness that Lisa couldn't quite pinpoint at first. Over the past couple of years, Mark had started spending more and more time at work. He came home late, explaining his absences with urgent projects and client meetings. His excuses sounded plausible. Mark was indeed a talented professional, highly valued at his company, but Lisa increasingly noticed that he was pulling away from her, becoming more withdrawn, and no longer showing the same interest in their family life as he once had. At first glance, their marriage still seemed perfect. They had stable incomes, healthy children, a cozy home, and decent neighbors. Yet Lisa began to sense that something had changed in their relationship. She couldn't remember the last time she and Mark had simply sat together, holding hands and talking about their dreams, like they used to in the early years of their marriage. Their life had become entirely focused on the kids, work, and daily routines. Even sex, which used to bring her so much joy, had become infrequent and mechanical. What worried Lisa most was how Mark had started to avoid communication. They used to talk for hours discussing future plans, work problems, and sharing dreams. Now, their conversations had dwindled to mundane matters: who would pick up the kids from school, who would buy groceries, when to fix the leaky faucet. Lisa tried to rekindle their former closeness. She organized romantic dinners, bought new lingerie, but Mark seemed distant and constantly tired. More and more often, he chose to spend his evenings in his office, claiming he needed to finish another project. By the time he returned home late at night, Lisa was already asleep, and in the mornings, he would leave for work before she even had a chance to wake up. Lisa tried not to dwell on these changes, convincing herself that this was just a normal phase in married life. But one incident made her doubt that. It was a couple of months ago when she accidentally found a receipt for 2 movie tickets. Lisa remembered that on that particular day, Mark had said he was working late. It was a small detail, but it stuck in her mind like a thorn. Since then, she couldn't shake the feeling that Mark was hiding something. Meanwhile, Sarah and Nate continued with their lives, seemingly unaware of the tension between their parents. Sarah was busy preparing for school and dreaming of getting into an art academy. Nate loved playing baseball and often ran off to the local field with his friends, imitating his favorite athletes. Lisa always made an effort to support the children in their hobbies and took pride in how they were growing up: polite, kind, and considerate. Yet, something had undeniably shifted in their family life, and Lisa felt that it wasn't just a midlife crisis or fatigue from the daily grind. It was something deeper. She couldn't quite grasp what it was, but her intuition told her that changes were coming. Little did Lisa know that this was the beginning of the unraveling of the world she had so carefully built over the years. After the conversation Lisa overheard in the bedroom, her heart shattered with pain and disbelief. It was as if she suddenly saw the world from a new angle. Their home no longer felt as cozy, and her relationship with Mark no longer seemed so stable. For the first time in 15 years of marriage, she felt as though she no longer knew the man she had been living with under the same roof. Mark had always been her rock, and their golden rule was trust. But now, Lisa found herself on the edge of doubt and anxiety, unsure of what to do next. Lisa didn't immediately confront him. She was plagued by doubts. What if she had misunderstood? Maybe it was just an innocent conversation. Yet the memory of Mark saying, "I miss you," played on a loop in her mind, and she couldn't shake the suspicion of infidelity. The next day, Lisa tried to go about her day as usual, getting the kids ready for school, making breakfast, washing the dishes. But inside, everything was boiling, her thoughts in turmoil, and she could feel her world slowly crumbling. She watched Mark as he hurriedly drank his coffee in the morning, loading Sarah and Nate into the car on his way to work and school. She caught herself thinking that she no longer recognized him. He looked the same as always, neatly dressed, in a freshly ironed shirt, with a faint scent of expensive cologne. But now Lisa saw it as a deceptive mask. Deep down, a fear had started to grow inside her, the fear that everything she believed to be real might be a lie. That evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Lisa tried to talk to Mark. She cautiously brought up the topic of his work, trying not to show her unease. She asked if he wasn't spending too much time at the office, hinting that they should spend more time together. "You know, I think it's been a while since we went anywhere for the weekend," Lisa said, watching Mark scroll through the news on his phone. "Maybe we could go to the lake this weekend. It would be nice to spend some time together as a family." Mark looked up, his face tensing slightly, but he quickly regained a neutral expression. "That's a good idea, Liz, but I've got a project deadline, and I really need to work this weekend. Maybe in a couple of weeks?" He tried to smile, but it looked strained. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. That was the moment she realized her worst fears were coming true. Mark was pulling away, and it was no longer just a coincidence. The next few days were filled with constant anxiety. Lisa tried to maintain the appearance of a normal life, but everything around her felt alien. She could no longer look at Mark without feeling betrayed. Her mind was swirling with thoughts as she tried to make sense of what was happening. Sometimes when he went into his office, she wanted to confront him directly, to ask, "Are you cheating on me?" But each time, something held her back, a mix of fear of the truth and the faint hope that everything could still be fixed. Lisa began searching for clues. She paid more attention to what Mark was doing. Every time he left his phone unattended, she fought the temptation to pick it up and check his messages. She knew that doing so would destroy whatever was left of their trust, but at the same time she realized that trust had already been lost. Weeks passed, and Lisa decided to take a desperate step. One evening, when Mark went to take a shower, she quietly approached his phone, lying on the nightstand. Her heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would burst out of her chest. She quickly picked up the phone and started scrolling through his messages. At first, there was nothing suspicious, just regular conversations with colleagues, friends, a few notifications from social media. But then one name caught her eye: Stephanie. Lisa remembered that Mark had mentioned her as a colleague, but she had never paid much attention to it before. A message sent to Stephanie a few days ago made her freeze. "I can't wait to see you on Friday." Lisa reread the message, unable to believe her eyes. That Friday, Mark had told her he'd be in meetings at work and might be home late. A cold sweat broke out on her forehead. She continued scrolling through the conversation and found more messages filled with tender words that broke her heart. "You're the most beautiful. I miss your voice." Everything suddenly made sense. All the late nights at the office, the new shirts, the casually mentioned meetings with colleagues, it had all been a lie. Her heart sank as she scrolled through the messages. A wave of anger, betrayal, and fear rose inside her. She wanted to throw the phone, leave the house, scream, but instead, she silently placed it back and returned to the living room. One thought echoed in her mind: Mark is cheating on me. He has betrayed our family. Lisa spent a sleepless night lying next to her husband, who slept peacefully as if nothing had happened. She didn't know what to do. She felt deceived and humiliated, but she was paralyzed by fear of the future. What would happen to the kids? How would she explain to them that their father was no longer the hero they believed him to be? And most of all, how could she continue to live with this knowledge? The next day, Lisa tried to focus on her daily routine, but her mind kept returning to what she had discovered. Her thoughts were filled with images she couldn't shake. Mark with another woman, his smiles, the whispered words of love meant for someone else. She began to feel like a stranger in her own home. Even the everyday tasks, cleaning the kitchen, making dinner, reminded her of how everything had changed. But Lisa wasn't ready to take drastic action just yet. Deep down, she still clung to the hope that this could somehow be fixed, that Mark would confess and things would change. She was caught in an internal battle between the desire to save her family for the sake of the kids and the burning anger over his betrayal. This was the first crack in their marriage. Lisa knew the next step would be decisive, but she still didn't understand the price she would have to pay to take it. After reading the messages between Mark and Stephanie, Lisa could no longer live as she had before. Her life changed in a single night. The inner world she had thought so solid began to crumble, leaving only the ashes of betrayal and despair. Though she hadn't yet confronted Mark, the feeling of distrust grew stronger with each passing day. At first, Lisa tried to behave as usual. She knew she needed time to process her emotions and didn't want to jump to conclusions too quickly. But with each day, the tension mounted. Everything Mark did aroused her suspicions. When he came home late, explaining it was because of work, Lisa began to doubt whether it really was work. Every phone call or notification made her flinch. She tried to keep her emotions in check, but soon realized she couldn't live in the shadow of her anxiety any longer. One night, lying beside Mark, Lisa realized that their bed now felt cold and foreign. They used to fall asleep in each other's arms, talking about future plans or reminiscing about the past. But now Mark lay with his back to her, lost in his thoughts, or perhaps, as Lisa imagined, in his feelings for Stephanie. She wrestled with the urge to start a conversation but held back, afraid that reality might be even worse than her suspicions. Every morning, Lisa woke up before Mark and spent a few minutes just looking at him, trying to understand what had happened to their marriage. He looked the same, confident, calm. But Lisa knew there was a lie behind that mask. She tried to pinpoint when things had gone wrong, when their relationship had turned into a routine. Maybe it was after they had kids, or perhaps it was when Mark got his promotion and began devoting more time to his career. But she couldn't find the exact moment when their love began to fade. She started noticing that the children, too, sensed something was off. Sarah was retreating more often into her room, spending time on her phone and avoiding conversations with her parents. Nate, usually cheerful and active, had become withdrawn and irritable. Lisa knew the children could feel the tension at home, but they still didn't know why. She couldn't bring herself to shatter their world, and that held her back from making any drastic moves. In the meantime, Lisa continued to watch Mark closely. She became more vigilant about his behavior. One evening, when he came home late, she noticed a new scent, a woman's perfume that didn't belong to her or her friends. Rage boiled up inside her, but she restrained herself from causing a scene in front of the children. She knew Mark was lying, but she wanted to learn more before accusing him of infidelity. Gradually, Lisa began planning how to expose him. She felt that she needed a strategy, that she had to be prepared for anything. She spent a long time thinking about how to approach the situation without destroying everything at once. She didn't want the children to suffer from their breakup, but she couldn't live with the uncertainty any longer. She was tormented by the thought of how Mark could have done this to her after all the years they'd spent together, after everything they had been through. One evening, Lisa decided to take a desperate step. She wanted to find out exactly who her husband was spending his meetings with. She couldn't just sit idly by, knowing that her family could fall apart at any moment, so she decided to follow him. When Mark told her he had yet another important meeting with clients, Lisa made up her mind to track his movements. She put off all her plans, asked the neighbor to watch the kids, and followed him to his meeting. The evening was quiet and dark. Lisa drove behind Mark's car, keeping a safe distance so he wouldn't notice her. Her heart pounded so fast she could hear it in her ears. She didn't know what to expect, but deep inside, she was certain the truth would soon be revealed. Mark's car turned into the parking lot of a small restaurant downtown. It wasn't the kind of place for business meetings. It was a cozy little spot with dim lighting and a romantic atmosphere. Lisa parked a few meters away from the entrance, watching as Mark got out of his car and walked toward a woman standing by the door. It was Stephanie. They embraced. Lisa felt the ground fall out from under her. This was the confirmation of what she had been dreading to discover. She watched them, unable to believe her eyes. They entered the restaurant, holding hands as if it were the most natural thing in the world. In that moment, Lisa knew her world had collapsed. All her hopes that this was just a misunderstanding evaporated. When Lisa returned home, she sat in silence, not knowing what to do next. She knew she could never look at Mark the same way again. The pain of betrayal ate away at her from the inside. She wanted to scream, to break something, to release the hurt, but instead, she just sat in the kitchen, clutching a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Lisa felt utterly crushed. Everything she had built over the years had come crashing down. She lost confidence in herself, in her marriage, in the idea that her life had been real. Every time she thought about Mark, she pictured his hands holding another woman. Lisa knew there was no going back. Their relationship was shattered, and now she had to decide what to do next. Lisa couldn't bear it any longer. After seeing Mark with Stephanie at the restaurant, her world was completely turned upside down. On the way home, she replayed in her mind every possible scenario of their upcoming conversation. Inside, a storm of emotions raged: anger, disappointment, pain, and most of all, a deep sense of betrayal. She knew she couldn't live in ignorance anymore. The question wasn't whether she would confront Mark about the affair, but how she would do it and how he would react. The next day, Lisa struggled to gather her thoughts but couldn't shake the feeling of the catastrophic conversation looming ahead. She dropped the kids off at school, returned home, and sat in the kitchen, staring out the window. The outside world seemed oblivious to her suffering. The bright sun shone on the lawn, and neighbors went about their routines, but Lisa felt completely detached from reality. Mark came home late that evening as usual. Lisa sat in the living room waiting for him, summoning all her willpower. When he entered the house, his face looked tired but calm, as if nothing had happened. He walked past her, heading to his study, but Lisa stopped him. "Mark, we need to talk." She tried to keep her voice steady, but her hands trembled, and she was barely holding back tears. Mark paused in the doorway of the study, turned to her and met her gaze. He looked confused, but something in him shifted. He sensed this conversation was unavoidable. "What do you want to talk about?" he asked, trying to stay calm. Lisa stood up and approached him. She looked into his eyes, hoping to find some excuse or sign of regret, but his face remained expressionless. This only fueled her anger. "I know everything, Mark," she said, her voice beginning to shake. "I know about Stephanie. I saw you together yesterday." His eyes widened briefly in surprise, but he quickly composed himself. A tense silence followed, during which Lisa felt her breathing quicken. She waited for his reaction, an explanation, an apology, tears, anything. But instead he simply sighed. "Lisa, it's not what you think," Mark began, but Lisa cut him off. "Not what I think? Are you serious?" Her voice grew louder. "Do you think I didn't see you hugging her, holding hands? Do you think I don't know what's been happening behind my back for months? I read your messages, Mark. You've been lying to me. You've been cheating on me this whole time." She couldn't hold back her tears any longer. Anger and hurt overwhelmed her, and she felt the ground beneath her feet giving way. Her voice grew louder until she was shouting. "How could you? How could you do this to me? To our family? To the kids?" Mark stood silently, his head lowered as if he didn't know what to say. Lisa looked at him in disbelief. He wasn't defending himself, wasn't trying to explain. That made her even angrier. "Say something," she demanded, clenching her fists. Finally, Mark slowly raised his eyes and looked at her. His voice was quiet, almost emotionless. "Lisa, I don't know what to say. Yes, I've been seeing Stephanie. It's true. He paused for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. "I was unhappy. We've drifted apart for a long time. I didn't feel alive anymore. I don't know when it started, but something between us broke, and I found in her what I was missing." His words felt like a knife to Lisa's heart. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This was what he called unhappiness. Hadn't it been him who had pulled away? Hadn't he stopped talking to her, stopped caring for her? You found in her what you were missing. Lisa whispered, stunned. What about me? What about our children? You only thought about yourself. What about everything we built together? All this time, I was trying to save our marriage, and you just destroyed it, she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks, but she made no attempt to stop them. Her pain was too overwhelming to hide behind a mask. Mark lowered his eyes again. He didn't know how to answer her questions. It was hard for him too, but his feelings for Stephanie overshadowed everything else. He felt guilty, but he didn't see a way out of this situation. I don't know what to say, Lisa, he said quietly. I didn't want it to end this way. But I can't pretend anymore. I can't keep living a lie. Lisa felt her world completely shatter. She looked at Mark and realized that the man she had loved her whole life no longer belonged to her. He had changed, and their marriage, something she had believed was solid and unbreakable, was destroyed. Do you want a divorce? She asked softly, as if she couldn't believe the words herself. Mark nodded, not breaking eye contact. His answer was like a blow to her heart. Lisa knew this was inevitable, but she had still been hoping for a miracle. What will we tell the kids? She asked, staring at the floor. Her voice was almost lifeless. I don't know, Mark replied, but they need to know the truth. I don't want to lie to them. We need to tell them together. Lisa remained silent. 1,000 thoughts swirled in her head, but none brought her any relief. She felt empty. All the years she had devoted to her family, her love, her care, everything now felt like it was in the past. Her life was now divided into before and after. When Mark went into the study, leaving her alone with her thoughts, Lisa sat down on the couch and covered her face with her hands. The tears had dried up, but the pain remained. She knew their marriage was over, and ahead of her lay a new phase of life, one filled with loneliness, fear, and uncertainty. After that night when Lisa and Mark first openly talked about his affair, nothing could ever be the same again. The home that once felt so warm and cozy now seemed cold and empty to her. Even in the simplest things, breakfast with the kids, walks around the neighborhood, daily household chores, Lisa felt the inevitable crack that was slowly shattering her world. Every glance at Mark brought her pain, but they both knew it was the end. The children were the first they decided to tell. For Lisa, it was the hardest moment. She couldn't imagine how it would affect Sarah and Nate. They both seemed so happy and content with life. How could she destroy the world she had so carefully built for them? A few days after her conversation with Mark, Lisa gathered the children in the living room. Mark sat beside her, but he felt like a stranger. He was physically there, but emotionally distant. Lisa knew she had to take the lead, understanding it was her responsibility to try to soften the blow for their children. Sarah, Nate, your dad and I need to talk to you, she began, trying to keep her voice steady, though inside she was torn apart by the pain. The children exchanged worried looks. They had already sensed the tension in the house, but didn't yet know what was coming. Sarah frowned, while Nate just sat quietly, looking at his mother with his big, innocent eyes. Your dad and I have decided, Lisa continued, that we're not going to live together anymore. We're getting a divorce. The words hit like a bolt of lightning. Sarah immediately jumped up, her eyes filling with tears. What? Why? She shouted. You've always been together. Why are you getting divorced? Nate also looked stunned. He didn't say anything, but Lisa could see him struggling to understand what was happening. Lisa tried to find the right words to explain, but nothing came to mind. How could she explain to them that their father had cheated? How could she justify it? She knew they would have to learn the truth later, but for now, they weren't ready. We just can't be together anymore, Lisa said softly, looking at her children. This isn't your fault. We'll still take care of you, just like before. We both love you very much, and that will never change. Sarah burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. Nate sat with his head down, staring silently at the floor. Lisa felt her heart breaking into pieces. She saw her children's pain, and it was unbearable. Mark sat next to her, his face tense, but he didn't interfere. He knew there was no way to explain his actions, so he just remained silent. Later that day, Lisa went to her bedroom, leaving Mark with the children. She couldn't handle what she had just witnessed. She knew her marriage was over, but the fact that their family was falling apart felt like a true tragedy. She lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling completely drained. A few weeks passed. She and Mark had agreed that he would temporarily stay in the house until he found a place to live. These were the hardest weeks of Lisa's life. Every day, every glance, every meal reminded her that their marriage was over. When Mark left for work, she felt a small sense of relief but dreaded his return. Mark tried not to interfere with her daily routine, but sometimes he would go into the children's rooms and act as if everything was normal. Lisa watched this from a distance, feeling a sharp pain at how he managed to slip back into the routine so easily, as if nothing had happened. One evening after the children had gone to bed, Mark came into their bedroom and sat beside Lisa. She was looking out the window, avoiding his gaze. "I found an apartment," he said quietly. "I'll move out in a week." Lisa nodded but didn't turn to look at him. "Okay," she replied dryly, trying to hide her emotions. Mark was silent for a moment, then continued. "Liz, I know this. This is really hard for you. And I'm to blame. I can't justify what I did. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I never wanted things to end this way." Lisa didn't respond. She didn't know what to say. Mark's apology didn't change anything. The pain was too deep for her to simply forgive him. She could have told him she was sorry too, that she wished they could go back, but deep down she knew nothing would ever be the same again. "It's over, Mark," she finally said quietly, turning to face him. "You made your choice. Now we have to live with it." After that conversation, Mark did move out. The house became quieter, but it was a quietness that brought Lisa a sense of relief. She still felt the pain, but now she had the time and space to begin sorting through her feelings. With each passing day, she realized more and more that their marriage had been broken not only by Mark's infidelity, but by the fact that they had long since lost their connection. Several months passed, and Lisa started to adjust to a new rhythm of life. She spent more time with the children, trying to fill the void left by Mark's absence. She enrolled them in sports, began talking more with other parents at the school where she taught. It helped her distract herself from the pain and find a new direction in life. Mark continued to see the kids regularly on weekends. Sometimes Lisa noticed that he still felt guilty about what had happened, but there were no more discussions about the past. They had learned to communicate for the sake of the children, but their relationship as husband and wife was over for good. One evening, as Lisa sat on the terrace, watching the sunset, she felt a strange sense of peace. The overwhelming pain that had once consumed her after Mark's affair was gone. She realized that despite everything that had happened, she was starting to heal. Yes, her life had been broken, but now new possibilities were opening up before her. Lisa began attending yoga classes, something she had once thought was silly. It helped her relieve stress and focus on the present. Soon, she even made new friends who supported her through this difficult time. Lisa started rediscovering small joys in life, reading books, walking in the park, meeting friends for coffee. She knew that her future wouldn't be easy, but now she felt stronger. Lisa was no longer the woman who feared losing her husband. She realized that her strength had always been within herself, and that realization brought her a sense of freedom. A year had passed since Lisa and Mark finalized their divorce. In that time, Lisa had undergone a profound transformation, from a broken woman to an independent, confident person who found the strength to start a new life. It was a difficult process, but it changed her and helped her see the future in a new light. After Mark moved out, Lisa stayed in their shared home with the kids. The first few months were agonizingly hard. Everything in the house reminded her of his presence. She even considered selling the house and moving to start fresh, but the children loved it too much. For Sarah and Nate, the house was tied to their childhood, their friends, and their sense of security. Lisa decided to stay for their sake. The time she spent with the kids became her main source of support. she began focusing even more on their hobbies and interests. Lisa signed Nate up for a soccer team, something he had dreamed of for a long time, but they'd never found the time for before. Sarah, who had become increasingly interested in art, started taking drawing classes at a local art club. Lisa found comfort in being there for them and supporting them as they navigated their parents' divorce. Mark continued to see the kids on weekends, but his relationship with Lisa remained cold and formal. He tried to redeem himself in the eyes of the children by helping them with homework and attending their school events, but Lisa no longer allowed herself to hope that he could change or come back. She had made the choice to move forward. Stephanie, the woman Mark had cheated on Lisa with, soon disappeared from his life. Their affair hadn't survived the test of daily reality, and Mark found himself alone again. But Lisa no longer felt anger or jealousy over it. She only felt relief that her relationship with Mark was over and that she was no longer part of his problems. Lisa herself began to discover new interests. After months of pain and reflection, she decided to focus on what brought her joy. She started running in the mornings, enjoying the peace and quiet that her early runs through the park gave her. It became her personal time for reflection, a way to stay in harmony with herself. There were changes at work too. Lisa became more involved in school projects, taking on extra responsibilities. Her colleagues were supportive, many of them knowing what she had been through, and they treated her with sympathy and respect. Lisa began organizing extracurricular activities for the children, such as school plays and art workshops. It helped her take her mind off things and channel her energy into something positive. Her life was slowly settling into a new rhythm, but the true turning point came with a chance encounter with Jack, an old acquaintance she had known years ago through mutual friends. It happened in a local cafe where Lisa had stopped after one of her runs. As it turned out, Jack had also been through a divorce and, like Lisa, had experienced a difficult time in his life. They started talking. Jack turned out to be easy to talk to, and Lisa felt she could be herself around him, without any pretense. They talked about their kids, how they were coping with the divorce, and what it was like to start over after so many years of marriage. Lisa was surprised at how quickly she found comfort and understanding in him. At first, their meetings were just friendly, but over time, something more began to develop between them. For the first time in a long while, Lisa felt attractive and wanted. Jack was different from Mark. He was gentle, caring, but also confident. She didn't have to pretend or adjust to his expectations. He accepted her as she was. As their relationship deepened, Lisa was cautious. She didn't want to rush or get hurt again as she had with Mark. She didn't tell the children about Jack until she was sure the relationship was serious. When she finally introduced Jack to Sarah and Nate, to her surprise, the children welcomed him warmly and with understanding. Even Sarah, who had struggled the most with the divorce, told her mother she was happy to see her so happy. For Lisa, this was a pivotal moment, realizing that she could be happy again, that her life hadn't ended after the divorce. Her new path was full of opportunities she hadn't seen before. She had not only learned to value herself, but had also found the strength to trust others. Mark, seeing how Lisa was moving on and building a new life, tried to establish at least a friendly relationship with her. But Lisa wasn't ready to forgive him. She respected him as the father of their children, but the betrayal that had destroyed their marriage had left wounds too deep. She had no desire to return to the past. Another year passed. Lisa and Jack spent a vacation together at the coast, where, for the first time in years, Lisa felt truly happy. She sat on the beach watching Sarah and Nate play volleyball with Jack and realized she had finally found inner peace. Her life no longer felt broken, and the future no longer seemed frightening. She now knew that even after the deepest upheavals, it was possible to find the strength to move forward. The past no longer dictated how she should live. She was free.